If you've been following the space news in the latest weeks, you may be wondering what's going on with the International Space Station. There's so many problems almost every day. The last one is about this Russian satellite that released some fragments in orbit. This was a dismissed satellite that was on a descendant orbit and that was expected to re-enter the atmosphere and burn in about a year from now. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but some fragments were released from the satellite, and these were tracked from our Earth systems. Sometimes these situations happen in space with old satellites, and it's usually because a lot of systems have not been deactivated properly, like batteries or other active systems. In any case, as a form of precautions, the astronauts on board the space station, we're talking about 9 people now, had to go and find shelter in their own return capsules, like the Soyuz for the Russians and the Boeing Starliner for the Americans. And the idea was that they were ready to evacuate. So if some of these fragments would hit the space station and procure a damage they couldn't fix, they would immediately be able to abandon the space station and come back to Earth safely. Of course, the protocol wants the astronauts to sit in their capsules but leave the hatch to the space station open just in case the fragment hits the capsule instead, and in that case you want to evacuate the capsule and find shelter in the space station. After only an hour, the alarm was called off and there was no danger for the astronauts. The problem is that the orbit of the satellite at that stage was matching the same altitude of the space station, so nobody really knew before doing the right calculations what would happen with the trajectory of these fragments. The other issue that happened twice in the past few weeks was with spacesuits. In fact, 2 extravehicular activities were called off because of spacesuit issues. The first one was a couple of weeks ago, and it was called off because of some discomfort that one of the astronauts was experiencing with his spacesuit. We don't have the details, we don't know exactly what the discomfort was. Let's be clear, spacesuits are uncomfortable by definition. It's been an ongoing issue with different body types, and especially women, which have narrower shoulders normally and wider hips than men, don't really fit well these spacesuits because these spacesuits were originally designed mostly for men. And even though there are a couple of different sizes on board to accommodate for different sizes of torso, different heights and so on, it's much more difficult for a woman to feel comfortable in a spacesuit than it is for a man. And another situation happened a few days ago when they already depressurized the airlock completely, they already opened the outer hatch, and the astronauts noticed some water leak or some liquid coolant leak inside the airlock, which was already in vacuum at that stage. It wasn't clear whether this leak was coming from the umbilical that was still wearing at that time, but in any case, for the sake of safety, they called off the extravehicular activity and they repressurized the airlock and they took off their spacesuit again. Unfortunately, this has a cost, not just logistic, because of course you delay your planned maintenance activities, but also because there's an allocated amount of oxygen for each EVA. And in cases like this one, even though the EVA didn't happen, the budget of oxygen actually decreased because of that. The third problem that they're still experiencing on the space station is about the Starliner spacecraft. We know that this is the first test mission for Boeing Starliner. There were issues before docking with some helium leaks, but also with some thrusters that were not functioning. The stay of astronauts on board has been extended quite a bit because the engineers on ground wanted to go and test all of these malfunctioning elements. It's not clear exactly what they managed to fix. They did find the root cause of some of the malfunctioning. Thing is, they don't expect all of the thrusters to function properly during re-entry, but they're confident that that's not going to be an issue for the safety of the astronauts. One of the reasons is that all of these little thrusters that spacecrafts have around them are usually redundant, meaning that if one fails, there's usually another one that can take over and do exactly the same job, exactly with the same performance. These thrusters are important because, of course, you want your spacecraft to be oriented correctly during the main maneuvers, and especially during the re-entry maneuver, you want to orient your spacecraft so that the main engine fires against the direction of motion so it can break the spacecraft down and bring it back towards the atmosphere for the final re-entry towards the surface. In theory, if the spacecraft is not aligned correctly, your deorbit burn won't be as effective and you could be stranded in orbit. Of course, this is not going to happen because they're really focused on keeping the safety of the astronaut as the first priority here. It's kind of funny that in a period where space station is experiencing all of these problems, NASA comes out with a statement saying they awarded a contract to SpaceX for more than 800 million to build a vehicle that can deorbit the space station. In order to deorbit the ISS, you need a specially designed vehicle because none of the existing spacecrafts right now is able to do it. Of course, the ISS won't burn up completely during the atmospheric re-entry because of the size and the mass of the structure, so it's very important to control the re-entry and make sure it ends up exactly where we want to. For now, it's been decided that the space station will be kept alive at least until 2030, so this will happen only after that. Anyway, they've already decided that Elon Musk will be the one responsible for its destruction.